All systems are go.
Roger that, Control. We will go for console launch.
Roger that, VCS. Power supply is plugged in. Cartridge port is open.
VCS is now at full distribution and great sales anticipated ahead. Control, we have a problem. There's a dip in sales. In television and ColecoVision, catching up fast. We can't keep up with them. We're losing them. We're losing them!
The Atari VCS video game console, past its prime. Atarians, we can rebuild it. We have the technology. We have the capability to make the world's first personal arcade machine. The 5200 will be that machine. Better than the VCS. Better graphics, faster processor, stronger arcade game library.
Welcome to our fourth episode of the Atari 5200 podcast. Well, actually it's episode 3.5, Missile Command Redux and Pac-Man Arcade. We were running out of time on our last show, so we decided to trim the details on the fly, and actually after hearing the episode for ourselves, we decided, no, we can't leave the episode 3 like that. So here it is, our first Amendum episode.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Captain Bob here. And I was doing Missile Command. And as we said, we kind of did some editing on the fly. It didn't turn out quite as good. And not only that, but I completely, well, for lack of a better term, foobarred the whole review because I never even talked about the gameplay. So we're just going to kind of skip ahead from everything. I'll give you a brief overview. This is Missile Command. It was published by Atari, 1982. It was model CX5202. It's basically a shooter, and it was developed by the great Rob Zadibel. We talked about the history a little bit. Now, here's what happens when you open up the manual. So, red alert, missile attack. Okay, so the story goes that you're on the planet Zardon, Earth's outermost colony. And over the years, the successful colony there has flourished. Well, there's a neighboring planet, Critolia. It's gone through some tough times, and they basically want the resources of Zardon for themselves. So they launch a missile attack to level the cities and take Zardon for themselves. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to use your anti-ballistic missiles, otherwise known from here on out are ABMs, and stop the incoming enemy warheads from destroying your civilization. This is basically U.S. versus USSR. It is a Cold War story, but this was the cover story that Atari used because we just didn't want to talk about stuff like that back then because it was always hanging over our heads, as we talked about in the last episode.
They even made a cartoon, a pamphlet for it as well, like a storybook. That
I think there's like a recording of that storybook. They made like recording and everything. I heard it on the Atari 2600's Game by Game podcast. I think Ferg had it on his, and it's pretty funny. So if you can get a hold of it, great collector item.
Oh, it definitely is.
Well, I just wanted to say, as we're talking about the Cold War theme, one of my favorite movies is Red Dawn.
Oh, Red Dawn! I was going to say
the original, not the remake.
The original.
I think 3 people saw the remake. The original is amazing. My personal Cold War favorite, War Games. Actually, it's going to be War Games, and then close behind, Cloak and Dagger.
All 3 good films. They're all good films.
And I love Cloak and Dagger because the 5200 actually kind of plays a background character to the whole thing. So, anywho, gameplay, your duty, should you choose to accept it, is to defend the 6 cities on your planet by destroying the enemy's weapons with your anti-ballistic missiles. The more enemy weapons you destroy and the longer you defend your cities, the more points you score. And when the enemy annihilates all your cities, the game is over. Literally. We'll talk about that here in a sec. So Missile Command can be played with 1 or 2 players. And what they do is the enemy attacks your cities and missile base with IPBMs, interplanetary ballistic missiles, because we don't want to talk about intercontinental ballistic missiles here. MIRVs, multiple independent reentry vehicles, they're using all the slang of the day, too. That's what I love about this. And the multiple independent reentry vehicles, or MIRVs, that's basically you'll see a missile coming down, and then it splits apart, and it will turn into either 2, 3, even 4. I was playing it just a little while ago. 4 separate missiles that have 4 different targets. It gets really tough really quick. So each attack lasts anywhere from 30 to 45 seconds. Each wave gets more difficult than the previous one. And on the 6th wave, the enemy launches smart missiles that can invade your ABMs, or I should say evade your ABMs, and home in on your missile base and cities. So you don't want that to happen, but they're extremely tough to shoot. Basically, it takes a direct hit to knock them out of the sky. So I've checked this out. I played it a little bit. The enemy only targets about 3 cities per wave. They can zap your missile base as often as they want, or as often as you allow it. It can get kind of hectic, especially in later waves. You have a total of 30 ABMs. And you have 6 in your launch pad at a time. So each set of ABMs is fired. You receive 6 more until all 30 are gone or the wave ends. And then your last 6 ABMs are on the launch pad. A cursor warns you by changing from an empty center to a solid center. So you basically have a full cross on there. Sometimes all you'll get when you press the fire button is a high-pitched. That's the no launch signal telling you can't fire any ABMs for the following reasons. You have no more missiles.
That's a bad day.
That is a really bad day. Your ABMs are not ready for launching, basically the computer can't put any more sprites on the screen. So you already have 8 explosions going. It has to cycle through all that and clear the screen so you can start launching again. At the end of each wave, the cities and the ABMs that you saved are displayed on the screen, and you're allotted bonus points for those. And we'll talk about that in scoring a little bit later. Okay, so the game ends when the enemy destroys all your cities and the end appears on the television screen, which is very cool, very much like the arcade. And what's great is if you just give it a moment, it'll start to explode with the explosions and everything else, just like the arcade. It's an absolute, pardon the pun, blast. So yeah, it's really cool. Haven't been able to road trip this game to go out and actually find a Missile Command machine to play with, but I'm telling you right now, from my memories as a kid, this thing is almost spot on. Okay, so using the 5200 controllers, you can use the native controllers. I personally find them a little twitchy. The Waco controller is a little bit better, but hands down, if you haven't bought a trackball yet, I'm just going to proselytize this from one end to the other. Do yourself a favor. You'll love it. Get yourself a trackball.
And the trackball is definitely the way to go. I mean, I play it with the Waco and the 5200 controller, and it's okay. But certain games are built for certain controllers, and Centipede, Missile Command, you definitely want a trackball. It's just much more precise.
It's a beautiful thing, I'm telling you. And it looks, it just looks good sitting next to the 5200. It's a great piece of equipment. The game does come with a couple of keypad overlays. And so for your convenience, they are given to you. You don't really necessarily need them, but I highly suggest going to AtariAge.com. They have excellent scans of the overlays, and you can either print them out or just use it as a reference when you go to use your go to use the game. So player selection, it's pretty simple. It's the bottom star on the keypad. You can toggle between 1 and 2 players. You do have some really cool options, and I was playing around with these a little bit earlier today. You have a skip wave mode. So what you can do is you can, let's see, if I remember correctly, you press 0 on the keypad, and then what you can do is you can go 1 through 9 and skip the waves going in. So if you press like 4, so if you go into skip wave mode by pressing 0, press 4, you're going to start on wave 5, and then you can play the game from that point on. some game options that are available to you are practice mode. Now, if you want to practice hitting the smart missiles, which they're extremely difficult to hit, you got to hit them, dead on. You can press the 8 key on the keypad. It puts it into a practice mode, and you can see it on the screen as well. Then hit start, and only smart missiles will appear. The smart missile games can be started at different wave levels as well. So you practice on level 1, which is a nice way to just kind of get your feel on getting the cursor over the smart missile or to lead it a little bit. If you started on 9, they come fast and furious at you, and it's great practice. Another option you can do is bonus cities. So every 10,000 points that you get a bonus city if one has been blasted away, and it gets replaced. If you wish to play without this, to kind of put it in somewhat of a quasi-tournament mode, press the pound key or hashtag key, press that, and the bonus indication on the screen will go away. Okay, so scoring. All right, so you score points for every enemy weapon destroyed and bonus points for every city and ABM remaining at the end of a wave. And this is pretty much how they go. So the IPBMs, 25 points apiece. The MIRVs, or MIRVs, are 25 points each. Essentially, they're just missiles that have split into other missiles. Bombers will come along, they're 100 points. Satellites will come along, they're 100 points. Smart missiles are 125 points. Now, whatever's left over at the end of the wave, the ABMs that you have in reserve, you get 5 points each. Every city, you get 100 points. So anyways, as you progress through the game, obviously you go through different levels and everything. So about every 2 levels at the very beginning, the colors are going to start changing, and also the score is going to start changing because now you start getting into the realm of multipliers. So the display colors start to change about every 2 waves, and the colors are going to change on the screen. For me, this is probably the only thing that I think is the biggest drawback for this game. I just don't like the color change. I don't think it really adds anything to the game. I think it actually kind of detracts from it. But overall, it's a minor nuisance. And in some ways, it actually does kind of enhance the screen, but as it kind of scrolls through, it gets a little bit more annoying. I won't go through how these colors change, but basically, what's important is how it scores. So waves 1 and 2, you get the regular points as I explained before. Waves 3 and 4, the points double. 5 and 6, they triple. 7 and 8, they quadruple, and so on and so forth. So 9 and 10 is 5 times, 11 and 12 is 6 times, and then once you reach 6 times, it stays that way until you reach level 20, which there is no way. I think I've gotten up to a level 11. That's the best I've done.
I think I got 8, was about as best I did.
It is crazy when you get to the upper levels. I mean, it looks like the sky is just coming apart and coming at you.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm so good at this game that I have never, ever in my life witnessed the screen change color.
That's all right. Like I said, it's annoying. You don't want to see it. But anyways, after level 21, or I should say starting at level 21, the screen colors revert back to like level 1, and they just kind of scroll through from there. But I might be good, but I'm not that good. So anyways, the bonus city points that you can get. So every 10,000 points you receive a bonus city. And you'll hear this musical salute. It kind of goes... Your bonus city is placed at a vacant site chosen at random. And as I was playing, I got all my cities wiped out. I got my bonus cities. And where does it put it? It doesn't put it next to the silo system that I can protect it better. No, it puts it completely on the other side of the screen. So, yeah, that wasn't any fun, but these things do happen. So like I said, every 10,000 points, you get a bonus city. Now, if you have no destroyed cities at 10,000 points, your bonus city is held in reserve until a city is destroyed. Then the bonus city is put on the vacant site at the end of the wave, or I should say at the start of the next wave. And then bonus cities will be reserved until your score reaches 1 million points. And then at 1 million points, you lose all your cities in reserve. So I guess you have to have a few blow up so you can actually use your reserve cities. But if you're that good, do you really necessarily need it? So there's some game strategy here. And there is a lot here, but basically when an ABM detonates, it explodes into a cloud. Use this to your advantage because the other things that it touches will detonate as well. They will make a big cloud, so you can actually set up a line of defense using the weapons that are coming at you. So I'll run through a few of these things. As soon as you launched an ABM and marked the target for detonation, move the cursor. Basically, you're stick and move. Launch, move to the next one. Launch, move to the next one. Doing this, lead your shots. In fact, that's basically the only way that you can survive at this game is to launch your missiles, move to the next trouble zone, launch a missile, move to the next one, launch a missile. Try to hit those bombers and the killer satellites that come in from the side of the screen. Try to get those as quickly as possible before they can drop any missiles, because if they drop a missile, those things can turn into MIRVs. They'll split up and they'll just go everywhere. And if they get below a certain point, you can't shoot at them. They're basically, in fact, in the manual, they call it the radar line. So you don't want to have those missiles get too low, because after that, it's basically game over. The smart missiles are tough. You have to hit them dead on. And they're designed to evade your ABM detonators. So when you shoot at one, if you don't hit it dead on, it will scoot. You'll actually see it kind of work its way around the detonation cloud, and it'll just keep on going for the target that it's intended for. And like I said before, hit those targets before they cross the radar line, and that's that imaginary line where you can't shoot below. You can see it in a way because you can bring your cursor down as far as you can, and it won't go any further. That's the radar line. So anything gets below that, you're pretty much toast. Don't waste any ABMs on enemy missiles that are heading for dirt or, holes that are already in the ground. That's obvious. Don't let any smart missiles distract you. Sometimes you can try so hard to hit these things you forget to defend your planet with the rest of the sky that's coming down on top of you. So, yeah, don't get distracted. You really have to kind of keep an open mind and an open eye for everything that's happening around you. Now, this is something I never knew until I started reading everything and doing a little bit more research on this. But since the enemy can only destroy 3 cities per wave, after you've lost 3 cities, concentrate on destroying the high-score enemy targets. And also, you can concentrate on where the other missiles are kind of, if you can figure out which 3 they're going after, you can now kind of target the sky and place these missiles in there so it can knock those missiles out before they even have a chance to even get halfway down the screen.
I didn't know that.
Neither did I until today. I was like looking through all these notes and I was like, oh, you're kidding me. Oh, my goodness. That might be just a limitation of the system, though. But, hey, as with any game, whatever limitation there is, take advantage of it.
Absolutely.
And I think the biggest thing, and I was pretty successful using this strategy, but, you only have 30 ABMs. But try to create a missile umbrella where you can lay down a series of missiles across the screen so as these other missiles come in at you, they detonate and they can actually cause a huge area, basically a huge area of destruction that kind of wipes out all the enemies in a certain sector of the sky. It works pretty good. You might want to do that earlier in the game rather than later in the game. But you could also use it as kind of a Hail Mary technique to try to protect your cities, to try to keep on going and everything. So other than that, that is the description for Missile Command. I do want to apologize to our listeners and everything. I completely blanked out on it. And part of my reticence on actually explaining it is this is one of the classic games. I think there's maybe 3 people on the planet that have never played this game, and I just kind of assumed it. And I kind of... I'm sorry for assuming that, and I hope this kind of heals the wounds, as to say.
It's okay, pal. Better luck next time, Steve.
So, anyways, yeah, sorry, Steve Austin kind of augured that one in, but yeah,
it's understandable. I mean, Missile Command, Space Invaders, Pong, those are just games that are just so entrenched in classic gaming. It is hard to imagine that someone might not have played it, but it is possible.
Well, Missile Command also does another thing, and it's really entrenched into the psyche of the time. I mean, we all talk about this whole Cold War thing, which politics aside, almost feels like we're heading for it again. But anyways, Missile Command really tapped into the whole Cold War psyche that was going on. We all thought, and I think we talked about this on the last episode, where we all thought that, hey, it wasn't if, it was when, and it was really we just kind of lived underneath this whole umbrella. I mean, our whole society for almost 60 years. It was an interesting way to grow up, especially with the whole duck and cover. We never did duck and cover drills, but I figured it this way: in the Seattle area, those things are going to drop. You basically had to be 100 feet underground to evade anything, because we have so many different industries here, the biggest one being Boeing, that, we build airplanes and all sorts of airplanes. And it's the big airplanes that can carry, stuff that can drop stuff from the sky, kind of like the bombers on this game. So, yeah, it was, it really taps into that, and everybody knew this game. So I kind of went with an assumption there, and yeah, I do apologize to our younger viewers, or I should say listeners.
Wolverines!
Wolverines! Shall we play a game?
Wouldn't you prefer a good game of chess?
And anyone who's seen that movie has seen the gameplay of Missile Command. So again, it's just hard to imagine people not knowing it, but it's possible.
You know what? I'm going to tap that one more time. War Games. If you haven't seen it, you have to see it. Put Matthew Broderick on the map as a lead actor. He carries the movie beautifully. If you haven't seen it, it's about a kid who hacks into a essentially, it's called Whopper. I think, what is it? Weapons Operation Program.
Planned response.
Planned response. Thank you. Anyways, he taps into it, and the machine starts playing the game, thermonuclear warfare. And the thing is that everybody's monitoring the machine, doesn't know it's a game, and it's the whole morality play comes through as well. But long story short, towards the very end, it's not really a spoiler since it's over 30 years old, but at the very end, it looks so much.
Is that the general calling now?
Yeah, it's NORAD.
No, that's
Crystal Palace. Can you read me? Crystal Palace.
No, that's the school hotline giving us a message. But anyways, War Games, towards the very end of it, it is Missile Command. In fact, Atari did do graphics and everything for that movie. So I wonder if they actually did do stuff, based off of what they did with Missile Command.
Well, another important thing that came out of that movie was learning how to log into your school computer and change your grade.
Yes, and how simple the passwords were, because today's password is pencil.
Yes, children back then, you had to use a telephone and dial in. It wasn't the internet.
Yep. No, those were the days. Remember when a 1200 baud modem was real? I mean, that was a hot rod.
My first one was 150.
Wow.
That's my age. I know I'm old.
Oh, that's incredible.
Well, Bob, before I get the president on the horn, why don't you tell the good listeners what your review out of 10 was for this game again?
Okay, well, the review that I did, it pretty much matches up with everybody else on the interwebs. Graphics, I gave it 8 out of 10. I took 2 points off since they took the 2 bases away, and we talked about that, how originally there were 3 missile bases that you could use on the arcade version. So they simplified it, brought it down to 1. I kind of knocked 2 points off of that, and also for the background color change. I'm not a fan of it. Sound and music, I gave it 10 out of 10. It's almost a perfect port to the arcade. Gameplay, I'm going to give it 9 out of 10. I'm taking a point off just because of the missing bases, but you really don't miss them all that much. I did it anyways, but the gameplay is almost spot on a match for the arcade. And presentation. This was kind of a tough one. I just gave it 7 out of 10. It's the standard 5200 packaging, better than average artwork. In fact, let me bring that artwork up and take a look at it. Yeah, I mean, we talk about it's supposed to be this interplanetary thing, and yet if you look at the box art, everybody's wearing U.S. naval uniforms, and everything looks not super futuristic, but it looks pretty much spot on to the technology that you would have back in the 1980s. So, yeah, overall, I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. Definitely one you want to have in your collection. Holy smokes, I just got an alert. Actually, if you want to put this into the show, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, are you talking about the price so far?
I just got an alert from eBay.
Yep.
At the 15-minute mark.
Yep.
Right now, actually, officially, it's 14 minutes and 26 seconds to go for the brand new Atari 5200. Holy smokes, it's past retail value from back in 1982. We are at $405 US.
Jeez.
Well, I will definitely tell you I would not pay that much. And it's the same it's the same guy who started bidding at $200. It's a duel between two of them.
Oh, that's all you need.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
Well, it's not us.
No. He priced me out of the market.
Whoa.
I thought $250 was expensive enough.
Oh, man. I blame ourselves.
Well, it's the... Oh, please don't start talking me like Ferg effect now. So what is this? We got the 5200 podcast effect now?
I guess, yeah.
Everybody's going to love this system now. Everybody's going to want it. Everybody's going to need it.
Oh, well, obviously there are two people who want this thing badly because $405. My goodness. That is unbelievable. We'll keep an eye on that.
That's right. All right, everybody. Here we go. I'll be reviewing Pac-Man Arcade. Pac-Man Arcade is a homebrew that is published by Atari H. It's been published since 2012. It doesn't have a model number. The genre is homebrew, maze-type game. Now a little bit about the developer. The original developer was Atari Inc., who did the 1983 Miss Pac-Man version. However, Perry Tente, aka Tep 392, along with contributions from Mr. Fish, helped develop this Pac-Man Arcade hack. The label artwork was done by John Atari Boy Calcano. Now let's take a look at the description right off the Atari Age website itself. Keep Pac-Man alive. This is the sensational game that took the world by storm. Help Pac-Man eat up the dot and defy the ghosts as you guide him through the maze. Gobble dots, energy pills, fruit, bells, keys, and ghosts to score points. Eat all the dots on the screen and the maze starts all over. Score 10,000 points and earn a bonus Pac-Man. While the original Atari 5200 Pac-Man was an excellent rendition of the arcade game, we have taken it further to give you one of the best Pac-Man experiences you can have on a classic console. The maze has been updated to be more scale with the arcade version. All graphics and sounds have been updated. Gameplay elements have been given attention. Also, the speed, ghost tracking behaviors, energizer bonuses, times are identical to the arcade original. This is the arcade experience at home. All right. Now let's talk a little bit about the differences between Pac-Man Arcade and Atari's 1982 Pac-Man. Well, for one, the ghost colors are more accurate, and Inky is blue rather than green in the original Atari 5200 version. Ghosts have eyes that also change shape from round to angled to give you a clue to what direction the ghost will go. Game now has a tracked mode. That's right. If you turn the game on and you don't touch it, it will eventually shift into showing you gameplay. On the original Atari 5200 version, it's just a static screen. I've never seen it show any gameplay, so that's a bonus as well. Pac-Man is now able to corner his turns. He does not have to wait until he reaches the middle of a turn to change directions as the ghosts do. Instead, he may start turning before he reaches the center of a turn. This technique is known as cornering. For every successful cornering maneuver, Pac-Man puts a little more distance between himself and any ghosts following close behind. The maze shape now is closer to the arcade, but not quite. It's more of a square versus the wide rectangle that was on the Atari 5200 original Pac-Man game. Now, of course, the arcade is more of a tall rectangle. Also, the arcade font for the score, etc., has been updated to look more like the arcade versus the Atari operating system font. Sound effects and music are now closer to the arcade, and dots are actually now square versus being rectangles. So if you take a look at the original Atari 5200 Pac-Man, you'll notice that the dots that you're eating are little rectangles. Now they're little squares, so they more look like the dots of the arcade. Now, starting difficulty on the Atari 5200 version is easier than on the homebrew Pac-Man Arcade version. Now, because the aspect ratio of the screen is a square versus a rectangle as in the arcade, it means that the arcade patterns can't be used as a strategy, as the original arcade game has more dots vertically, but the same amount of dots horizontally. However, this does open up the avenue to discovering new patterns. Now, the Atari 8-bit version has a high score saving feature, as it uses the Atari Max carts, while the 5200 version loses the high score every time you shut the game off. Now, another thing that's very important is ghosts now follow the rules of the arcade and mutually exclusive modes of behavior depending on the mode that they're in. These modes are chase, scatter, or frightened. Each mode has a different objective or goal to be carried out. And because this game uses the arcade logic, you are now basically playing the arcade game at home. So let's start. The chase mode. The ghost's objectives is to find and capture Pac-Man by hunting him down. Each ghost exhibits unique behavior when chasing Pac-Man, giving them different personalities. Blinky, who's red, is very aggressive and hard to shake once he gets behind you. Pinky, who of course is pink, tends to get in front of you and cut you off. Inky, who is light blue, is the least predictable and can act as Blinky, Pinky, or Clyde. Clyde, who is orange, seems to stay out of the way. He moves at the same speed as Inky and Pinky and tends to separate himself from the other ghosts. Clyde will act based on his proximity to Pac-Man. Now, if Clyde is closer to Pac-Man, he then switches to scatter mode and starts heading for his corner, which is on the lower left, until he is far away to target Pac-Man again. Now, another mode is called scatter mode. The ghosts give up the chase for a few seconds and head for their respective home corners. It is for a brief period before they revert to chase mode again. And then the last mode is frightened mode. So when Pac-Man eats one of the 4 energizers located at the far corners of the maze, the ghost will turn dark blue and aimlessly wander the maze for a period of time. Soon they will start flashing before returning to their previous mode of behavior. After every few levels, you'll get an intermission animation. You gain a bonus life at 10,000 points. Now, back in August of 2016, I did an interview with Perry, covering Perry's history programming Ataris, his motivation for making this game, and how it differs from Atari's 1982 version, and its similarities and differences to the original arcade game itself. Take a listen to the Atari XEGS Card by Card podcast, Episode 4, and Interview Episode 1 to learn more. So what's my rating? Well, graphics, I give it a 9. Great graphics and a significant upgrade from the original Atari version. Not quite the arcade, but pretty darn close. Sound and music, I'm giving it a 9. It sounds closer to the arcade versus the 1982 Atari 5200 version, giving that real arcade feel. Plus, the music feels faster than the Atari 5200 version. Gameplay, 10. Hands down the best Pac-Man version on the Atari 5200. The gameplay, the logic, behavior of the arcade is all here. Just the shape of the maze and the number of the dots prevent this from being spot on. Presentation, excellent splash screen. You get to see the screen. It looks very reminiscent of the original 1980s where you see Pac-Man. He's got the two little feet, and behind him is the ghost. It's very nostalgic when you get to see it. Plus, we've got intermissions and the attract mode. Overall, it's a 9.5 out of 10. It's not quite a 10, but it's darn close. A must-buy for any Atari and Pac-Man fan alike. So if you want to learn more about the logic and gameplay of Pac-Man, I suggest you look up Pac-Man Dossier on Gama Sutra, a definitive source for the arcade version of Pac-Man. So let's take a look just quickly at 2 Atari Age reviews. One of the reviewers is yours truly, and I reviewed this on Atari Age back in July 22nd of 2016. And what did I say? I gave it 5 joysticks out of 5, and I said, if you love Pac-Man and the Atari 5200, this is the version to get. I reviewed this game on one of the Atari 5200 Super Podcast episodes, and it blows away the original 1982 game. The game demonstrates why the 5200 is the Super System. And there's a shout out to the original Atari 5200 Super Podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the second review is Keith Sheehan, and he gave it also 5 joysticks out of 5, and he said, this is as close as you're going to get to the arcade version of Pac-Man on the 5200. Tep was meticulous in bringing not only the look and feel of the arcade to the 5200, but the rules, scoring, intermissions as well. The Atari port was good for its time, but this one blows it away. So there you go. So what I suggest to our listeners, if you're a big fan of Pac-Man, the arcade game, and you love your 5200, go on over to Atari Age, pick yourself up a copy. You won't regret it.
Show the love. I was going to say, I wanted, about showing the love and kind of segueing into this. I got in my lap here, it was given to me by a good friend, but I have my on vinyl, my LP of Pac-Man Fever by Buckner and Garcia. And really what I want to do is I kind of want to give my respects to Masaya Nakamura. He was the creator of Pac-Man, pretty much known as the father of Pac-Man. He just passed away at the ripe old age of 91. So
good age.
That's a great run.
His legacy is going to go on because I don't see Pac-Man ever disappearing. It's one of those games that whether it's today, tomorrow, or 50 years from now, Pac-Man's still going to be around in one form or another.
It's like golf. It's easy to learn, and it takes a lifetime to master.
Unless you're, what's his name, Billy Mitchell?
Yeah.
Well, I have the video game prowess to at least be able to shine the man's shoes.
Awesome. That's something.
That's as best as I can get to his abilities.
Okay, so apparently we missed out on this item.
Oh.
The Atari 5200 system, console, in-box, classic, rare, new. Final bid, $461.
Wow.
Oh, well.
22 bids. 22 bids.
Well, congratulations on whoever bought it. It was
absolutely.
The same
I'm
guy.
Sure be happy with it.
Well, it was the same guy who started the bidding at $200. It was a war between him. Then all of a sudden, some other guy came out of nowhere. Looks like he bid $456, but the champ came back with a 461 uppercut.
Woo!
Don't they know you don't bid to the last 3 seconds? Were they crazy?
Yeah, there were 22 bids and only 3 people were doing the bidding. Wow.
Yeah, there's only 3 people altogether. Well, I'm
Unfortunately,
sure
we kept David on this particular podcast and kept him from bidding.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Thank God for that.
Because we know what happens. We know what happens if 2 people say know each other and bid on eBay. Say for a track.
Oh no, another trackball again. We'll never.
I got lucky with my trackball. I got it a few years back, new in box, and at the time I thought I was paying a lot of money for it. I think I paid $80 with free shipping, and yeah. What's interesting though about the trackball controller is no matter what, if it's even if it has been sealed the entire time, that the ball itself, the actual control ball that's within the machine, will yellow over time, no matter what.
Yeah,
so
I hate that. I hate that part actually.
No, I wonder if retrobrighting would work on the ball.
I don't know.
But is it also true? I think someone had said that a regular cue ball would fit.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I think someone's done that. They actually replaced it with an 8-ball.
Oh yeah, I seen a picture of it with an 8-ball. It looks pretty good actually.
Yep.
If I remember right, Dan Kramer did model this thing, because if you take apart the actual Missile Command machine, the trackball in there is actually quite large. It's about the size of a grapefruit. So, yeah, the original in the arcade is actually a very large piece of equipment. And the whole idea that Dan was going for was he wanted to replicate that, but he wanted to do it on a much smaller scale. So I think he did model the original ball after a cue ball from a pool table.
They call me a cue ball, so it works.
There you go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so there you have it. That's our first addendum episode and hopefully our last addendum episode. We do apologize for not nailing all this the first time, but again, time kind of got short, and we definitely skipped a few tracks there. But nonetheless, we want to make sure that you guys out there who are listening get the best possible podcast for this best possible machine. So again, thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of it. Tune in next time, because we're coming up on two of the greater ones too. We're looking at Gorf and, of course, my favorite, Star Raiders.
Thanks for tuning in again to this episode. We do appreciate it. It's tough when you have 3 guys who are very passionate about classic gaming and this system to try and squeeze everything down into the time frame that we do, and we kind of get off track sometimes. But just because we have a passion about the system and the generation of games. So, and true apologies to everyone out there for not getting this in the 3rd episode.
And that's it, everybody. That's the end of the show. Watch out. Episode 4 is coming. Be there or be square.
And remember, the Xylons are coming.
That's right. And have you played Atari today?
Actually, we have.
That's it. Okay, good night, folks.
Good night, everybody.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program are those of the hosts and persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of ColecoVision or Intellivision owners. The Atari 5200 podcast is not responsible if you should start liking the Atari 5200 console over its competition. At this time, the Atari 5200 podcast now concludes its podcast day and ceases recording. The Atari 5200 podcast is produced under the authority of Bob Benedetti and David Vucetic. Regular listening of this episode now continues on iTunes and other quality feeds.
Discover Atari. And discover how far you can go.
Have been given for this game. One reviewer, David Protest, I can't even say my own fake name. Oh my God!
I've been there.
Okay.
By the way, if you ever hear of a Captain Chet Coxworth or Colonel Juan Gigante, that's me.
Okay. So, Glenn, if you want to say, well, just say something. Well, that's it, folks. You say
Even that's all. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, that's pretty good.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Well, I would just like to God, we're brain farting a lot tonight.
We got to introduce you to the $6 million man.
Seriously?
Totally seriously.
Or at
Well,
least
I
you...
could also hear about crashes and all that stuff, like rebuilding. We can rebuild him. Blah blah blah.
What?